Time for business, and Sandra Feno has joined me in the studio. We're just having a conversation about the conversation we're about to have about sanitary pads.
Yes, it's quite sad. Some are fortunate, others are not.
Yes.
And it saddens my heart to see young girls struggling to get basic things like sanitary pads.
So we're going to be looking at some of the options that are available if you can't afford sanitary pads. But you bring us the business news.
Yes, so right now we have business, and my name is Sandra Essen. I'm up, and a very good evening to you, and I'm here for business. We start from Cocoa Board. Now, Cocoa Board said it is considering issuing a dollar-denominated bond in the coming month in the midst of a high debt profile as a result of numerous syndicated loans. The proposed $2 billion bond is intended to get the organization financially viable. Joy Business has been speaking to Deputy CEO in charge of Finance and Administration, who is in the person of Ray Ankra, and he says the move will make Cocoa Board a highly competitive entity in the near future.
Cocoa Board's meeting with some corporate executives from Standard Bank was aimed at exchanging knowledge on the finance and governance aspects of cocoa regulation in Ghana. CEO of Cocoa Board, Joseph Boahen Edu, explained that Cocoa Board has introduced new reforms in the face of dwindling cocoa prices on the world market, as well as the impact of climate change.
The sad thing is that every year, government and Cocoa Board will have to look for money to be able to pay the farmers. Or the farmers will have to improve upon their productivity. They have to do fertilizer application. They have to spray the farms. The farmer will need income.
Speaking to Joy Business at the sidelines of the meeting, Deputy CEO in charge of Finance and Administration, Ray Ankra, said Cocoa Board has considered issuing a dollar-denominated bond in the coming months.
Measures that we have put in place to ensure that we can embed sound financial discipline in the culture of Cocoa Board. Then the spin-off from that is this issue of trying to come up with some sort of a long-term bond over 20 years, possibly 15 to 20 years, that will enable us to take care of some of the legacy issues that we have inherited.
Standard Bank is a lead lender to Cocoa Board when it comes to the syndication loan. Representative of Standard Bank Group, Stanbic Bank, expressed confidence in Ghana's cocoa sector. Al-Hassan Andane is MD of Stanbic Bank.
There are certain things that, yes, the public sector, private sector does a lot of good things, but there are certain things the private sector doesn't do well, which is that social contract.
Meanwhile, Standard Bank Group lead Steve Bill has been explaining the contribution Standard Bank has made to cocoa production in Ghana.
If we look at that primary, or one of the three primary growth strategies around becoming more customer-centric, then what stood out in all the research was what's happening with the Cocoa Board in Ghana and our relationship to that board.
The Ghana Cocoa Board will on Thursday, May 30, cease its purchases of cocoa beans for the 2018 and 2019 main crop season. Cocoa Board says it will, however, allow licensed buying companies, LBCs, to obtain returns from upcountry centers by extending the date by one more week to Thursday, June 6.
Government is being urged to consider the creation of a comprehensive legislation on bribery and corruption. According to co-founder and managing partner of Addison Bright Sloan, Victoria Bright, current laws in the country are fragmented, making it difficult to fight the canker. She spoke to Sheila Tamaklo at the Private Sector Anti-Corruption Group Stakeholders Forum in Accra.
Under the theme Building an Enabling Environment for Private Sector Development, the role of the state and the private sector in fighting corruption, the Private Sector Anti-Corruption Group Stakeholder Forum brought together stakeholders, both private and public, to deliberate on how to tackle corruption and its negative effect on business and investment in the country. Speaking to Joy Business, managing partner and co-founder of Addison Bright Sloan stressed on the need for stringent laws against bribery and corruption.
We need to have a comprehensive piece of legislation dealing with bribery and corruption. Currently, the main legislation itself does not even define bribery. Bribery is defined elsewhere in another piece of legislation. So we need to have that so that if you look at the actual crime, you have one place that you can go to actually address all these issues and understand how it works. Secondly, I think enforcement is very critical. Right now, we have what I was talking about earlier as impunity-driven corruption, and that is that nothing seems to happen to people who are corrupt or who take bribes. And, their status in society seems to dictate whether or not they'll be punished rather than actually looking at the crime itself. So that is a problem. People are getting away with it. And so as long as people continue to get away with it, there's no incentive to stop. We have to name and shame. We have to ensure that people are punished. And the punishment has to be severe because, look, it's costing Ghana a great deal.
Meanwhile, advisor to the Commissioner General of Ghana Revenue Authority also urged businesses to blow the whistle on other businesses that evade the law and tax payments.
Giving the private sector the encouragement to report any instances of corruption. By so doing, we can ensure that this is significantly reduced and hopefully eventually eliminated.
Okay, so when it comes to the issue of the whistleblowing that you are driving, why should people blow the whistle on others? And also, when you do this, what incentives are there for those who blow the whistle on those who are defying the laws?
Yes, if you report a case of corruption, you get a percentage of the penalty that would accrue as a result of the loss that would have been incurred as a result. And there is an encouragement to ensure that the bad nuts within the GRA are actually singled out and duly and properly sanctioned. So there's a whole collaboration between the public and private sector to drive out the bane of corruption.
The Private Sector Anti-Corruption Group is a project initiated by the UK-Ghana Chamber of Commerce to aid in the fight against corruption.
The value of transactions carried out on mobile money platforms for the first quarter of this year has reached 66 billion cedis. This was contained in the latest statistics covering electronic payments from January to March this year. That's more in the following Business Desk report.
The statistics show that 66 billion cedis was realized for the first quarter, representing a 27% growth over what it secured by the same period for 2017. The total amount of money accounts held with commercial banks was also 2.7 billion cedis. This was also 27% more than what was officially reported in the first quarter of 2017. Registered mobile money accounts ending March stood at 29 million, however, only 12 million were active. The mobile money business for the first quarter of this year had about 355,000 registered agents. The report showed that all the areas of transaction saw more than 20% growth in numbers. The National Communication Authority puts the number of mobile money subscribers at 40 million, with 38 million being active. The value of transactions carried out on mobile money platforms for last year reached 233 billion Ghana cedis, while the total amount held at commercial banks ending 2018 was 2.6 billion cedis. There are currently 3 operators in the mobile money space, that is MTN, Vodafone and Airtel Tigo. The statistics showed that MTN commands more than 90% of this market in terms of funds held with commercial banks and transactions.
To other stories now, Ghana has been ranked the most important destination in Africa for Austrian businesses. We have details plus other local headline stories coming up in our summaries tonight.
The Bank of Ghana has received 900 million Ghana cedis to undertake a cleanup of the troubled microfinance subsector of the financial services industry. The move is part of cleaning up the 7 billion Ghana cedi debt crisis that has hit a large sector of the deposit-taking non-bank institutions, including savings and loans companies in the country. The Ghana Cocoa Board will on Thursday, May 30, cease its purchases of cocoa beans for the 2018-2019 main crop season. Cocoa Board says that it will, however, allow licensed buying companies to obtain returns from up-country centers by extending the dates by 1 more week to Thursday, June 6, 2019.